Today's guest is Ben Fischer, a real operator's operator. This man has 45 plus years of experience in multiple concepts, restaurants he's started, restaurants he's operated, restaurants he's sold. We talk about everything. He says he's walked a mile in every operator's shoes, more than a mile. He has slung the hash, taken out the trash, and we talk about financials and running a business and leadership and training and team building and menus and right down to leases and everything that's important. Everything you're doing today, this man has seen and done well. So there's so many takeaways in this episode. Marketing, of all things, he is an expert at, and he is the founder of the ZivZo Marketing Agency, which we'll also talk about. Full service advertising, marketing, video, animation, they do it all, and it's all based on 45 plus years of operating experience. Stay tuned because there's so many nuggets of powerful information in this episode. From my experience, lots of marketers talk a good game, but they fail to deliver ROI. ZivZo is not just a full-service digital marketing agency, but industry pros that specialize in restaurants and a strategic decision to move your business forward. ZivZo excels in marketing, advertising, video, and animation production that brings your restaurant to life and enhances your brand visibility. Go to zivzo.com. That's ZIVZO.com. Ben, you are a restaurant marketing guru and you've got 45 plus years of experience with all sorts of concepts. And I want to get into a little of that. But before we do, a light moment. Tell us a crazy restaurant story.
So I had a restaurant in Crystal City, which is Arlington, Virginia. And this is the home of all the government contractors like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, all those contractors.
Yeah.
And I had a restaurant in the area and actually in the middle of Crystal City. And we derived 85, 90% of our action from the contractors and all of their employees. After 9/11, the government wanted to move a lot of these contractors out of Northern Virginia because there was just too many of them, too close, and they were afraid that if something happened, they'd all get wiped out. So in a matter of 60 to 90 days, 80% of the population was gone. And I had a thriving restaurant. One day, 90 days later, I was dying. It was bad.
That was the pandemic before the pandemic.
Oh yeah, this is before this is after, this is like 2009, 2008, after 9/11.
She almost expected like everything was going to come to a crashing halt and somehow you got saved. This is scary.
Wait. So the story is I am actually on the phone. Now, understand this. I've never closed a restaurant. I never had a problem selling a restaurant. I've always been able to make money, either operating it or selling it or both. But in this situation, I couldn't find a buyer and I was dying. And I was on the phone one day talking to a moving storage company about moving the equipment. And lo and behold, this fellow walks in and he says, "Do you want to sell your restaurant?" So I go, "I would consider it, and make me an offer." So he made me an offer that was beyond belief. So of course I accepted it. And I got lucky and he paid all cash, which is rare when you sell a restaurant. And it was a miracle. I've sold all my restaurants and I've never had a cash deal, 100% cash. It's always a certain amount down in paper over time. But in this case, it was all cash. And I was dancing in the streets over that. It was unbelievable how lucky I got.
Well, awesome story. I've been in a situation myself twice where I had a restaurant that I needed to sell and somehow something works out. And even though a first deal falls apart, sometimes a second deal is better, or the first deal doesn't happen. And then a couple of other deals fall apart and then the first deal comes back. And that happened to me. So you got so much experience, multiple restaurants. So obviously you mentioned making money, which is important to an entire audience, but what do you consider to be the essential operating systems of any successful restaurant, ones that you've started or just, what you consider to be essential?
When you say operating systems, I think let me go at it from a different angle. I think the most important things, and actually the future or the success or failure of a restaurant can be based on two items, your lease and your cost to construction, cost to open. So if those are out of whack, if you overpay for a lease or you don't have the right, language in there to protect yourself, term, all the different things that go along with the lease, and you overpay to construction, your estimated price to open is double what you expect it to be. Between your rent and your note, if those numbers are out of whack, you're never going to make any money. And 99% of the times, you won't make any money if your rent and note exceed 25% of your gross sales.
The foundational thing to set in place when you're thinking about signing a lease and knowing what your projected sales are going to be. And all those things need to align because, like you say, it's one of your biggest expenses, if not the biggest.
Yeah, I mean, the lease, look, if you don't have the right provision in a lease to sell your restaurant, yeah, you're in trouble. You have a short-term lease and you're doing gangbuster business, the landlord's going to know about it. He's going to jack your rent up. So, the lease is important. Also, the location. You want to be on Main and Main, not a half a block away, or, a half a block from Success. So those are a few things that, come to mind. But, whenever you open a restaurant, there's a lot to consider. It's a massive project, as you know. And, I always used to leave, a 20% add-on figure because, there's so many things that just hit you that you didn't expect. And, so after all the restaurants I've opened and I know the key to my success and the reason I was able to sell some restaurants, not all my restaurants were winners. I had some dogs, but I was able to sell them and come out because I knew how to build a restaurant cheaper than anybody. And that's because I was the GC. I ran my own construction jobs and probably saved half the money that a GC would charge to build that same space. And if anybody has any background in construction, I would highly recommend that they GC their own jobs. It's not that hard, GC is like having, employees, and you always call them at 7:00 in the morning. Where are you? I got to get this restaurant open, kind of thing. No different than where's my cook? So that was a lesson I learned to GC my own jobs early on, and that gave me an advantage, to reduce my risk factor by having less dollars into the project than most people would have.
So a lot of people open this business thinking, oh, I'm a great chef or a cook or whatnot. But suddenly they find out it's so much more than just about the food.
Well, when people say to me, I want to open a restaurant, my first response is, everybody wants to open a restaurant and own a restaurant until they do. If you're really not geared up and understand the business side of it, I tell people go put your money and buy some stock in McDonald's and forget about it. Running a restaurant is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. I mean, it's not an easy business to be in. That's why it has one of the highest failure rates. It is a monster to run, especially if you're running multiple operations. It's you're living it. There's no Saturday nights off. So you're there 24/7, either mentally or physically operating your restaurant. So even with chain operations, it takes a lot to really be involved, know what's going on, and to turn a profit, especially in today's world.
You're speaking about all the operators out there tied to their business, missing their kids grow up, buying themselves a job versus running a business. And that goes back to what I asked about systems. If you can systemize your business, empower your team to run the place like they owned it and had to pay for it, and then incentivize them to execute, learn the business and execute that business, then you can go out and do other things. And that was the secret to my success in this business. I had multiple restaurants, not because I was tied to it 24/7, but because of my team, this foundational dream team, I called them. And then you have the 30,000-foot view. And it was so gratifying to be a customer in your place and just walk in, not be working there, but sit there as a customer and just watch what's going on and see your staff shine, your guests having great experiences, and the online reviews and all the accolades that go with it. And then incentivizing people to have a piece of that action.
It all boils down to systems and control,
Right?
having those systems in place, having the control, and having staff that knows how to manage that control, and also cross-training everybody. The more they know, the less you have to worry.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And that's another great point. And we cross-trained a lot of people to do multiple jobs. And that was a backup plan, or somebody got hit by a bus or they got the flu. It's like we had competent people that could step into different jobs, even in a minute's notice. And the
Sure.
training, some people will consider that a cost, and I consider that an investment. And that
Right.
bit out more than once. So that was just a
Well, if you have a problem and you have cross-trained people, it flows. It just gets through the night, or with that, having that staff trained well. And believe it or not, if you cross-train your staff and they're well trained, your labor cost is going to go down. And that's a key fact. The more they know, the more they can do, the faster they can do it, the better they can do it, and the less dollars is going to run you, because you can get away with less people if they know what they're doing.
And that kind of lowers turnover because you're increasing satisfaction of your team. If they're not doing the same old job day in and day out, you can give them an
Right.
opportunity to learn new things, take on additional responsibilities. But don't get me wrong, not everybody wants to do that. And I give an example every once and again. I had a line cook that was just a stellar line cook, and he worked for me for 15 years, and that's all he wanted to do. And this guy, no lie, could have 20 or 30 steaks on the broiler. Everyone would come out to perfection, and this guy was just a superstar. And I applauded that. Don't discount someone that does a stellar job.
If they're doing a stellar job and they don't want to move up, then leave them alone and everybody's happy. I mean,
Exactly.
finding a good grill man or a cook in a certain situation, or line cook or broiler cook, I mean, finding that quality that can do it right is well worth making them happy and not pushing them to do something he may not be good.
You know that kids often determine where the family dines out, and they want the fun place. If you're a kid-friendly restaurant, Grub Lab is completely reinventing kids' menus. Imagine licensed NBA, NFL, and Hollywood brands in augmented reality that brings the characters to life right at the table, and collectible menus that rotate every few months, so there's always something new with your look and your logo. All just $99 a month. With Grub Lab, families stay longer and come back more often. It's a real loyalty driver. Go to grublab.co to get started. That's GRUBLAB.co. Yep, you're right. So that's leadership. It's like recognizing talent and either leaving it alone or encouraging it to grow and nurture and develop into more than what they are now.
Well, not everybody is built to be a manager, right? Or an owner. And what you're saying is so true, because, a lot of people just are good at what they do, and they don't have the capacity or the want or need to grow into a different position.
Let's talk about some finances. Now, you either did it yourself or you had a good handle on it, but what was really important for KPIs in the restaurants that you own to make them successful? That was a business unto itself.
Well, explain what you see as KPI first.
So for me, it was vitally important to take a regular inventory to calculate time costs and daily break even and watch those numbers and watch them closely. And if there were any spikes in labor from week to week, based on what I called the sweet spot, if there were any spikes in food costs, that was the sweet spot. The biggest needle mover for me was figuring out that my menu originally would have a different profit in each category, sometimes a fairly sizable spread, and really tightening that menu. So we really didn't care what we had, but as long as we were moving all the product, we cross-utilized ingredients, we didn't have waste or spoilage, we had minimal theft, and that really kept our costs down, but it was really focused on maximizing profit across the entire menu and having lots of table turns that were efficient, of course, so that we increased throughput. To me, those were financial KPIs and systems that we monitored pretty closely.
Well, you're always fighting food and labor. Those are your main, variables. a lot of your fixed costs are fixed. You can't change your rent. There's certain things you can't, you're not going to, no matter how much you want to do, make changes and lower the cost. So you can't do it. Food and labor is a controllable that management can watch daily. So like, I would always do inventories. I'd always have, the managers, oversee the labor, and I'd give them guidelines, what the labor should be. And I broke it down for them by the hour and by the employee. And, depending on the situation, I could say to a manager, you should have no more than 12 people on that shift based on the average, cost per hour and how many people and based on the volume. I mean, you got to calculate it. And a lot of time you got to spoon feed it to people until they get the understanding on how you're thinking. And once they do, then you can back off and things should hopefully run smoothly. But it's not always the case. I mean, we all have had managers that you depend on. I had a manager that I trained for, 3 or 4 months for a new restaurant we were opening, and opening day, he didn't show up. So
that's a common story these days, especially since the pandemic, or people signing up for interviews and then not showing up.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I did when interviewing people, the first thing I'd look at is their past employment and how long they stayed at the last job. So if I see an application that had 10 jobs in 2 years, I don't care what you're telling me. I'm not hiring you. If you can't keep a job, then you're going to do the same thing to me, right? I've never had anybody I interviewed tell me that they're never going to show up for work, or they're going to steal from me, or they're going to overpour the whiskey at the bar. Maybe I'd hire that guy. At least I know he's what he's all about. But no one's ever sat in front of you and said, I'm really bad at this. I'm not going to be reliable. Everybody's wonderful when you interview them. You got to the point when you do enough interviews, you just say, look, all right, I'm going to give you a week. Let me see what you can do. Don't tell me what you can do. I'm going to watch and go see let me see what you could do. But that's after I qualify them that, they can hold a job. I mean, that's the number one thing to me is when I get people, for interviews and they've had, like I mentioned earlier, 20 jobs in 2 years, if you see that, do yourself a favor. Don't hire that guy or that woman.
No doubt.
Either.
I always had the best luck by recruiting, not hiring, asking my best people who they knew that would fit our culture. We wanted to build this dream team where people felt like family.
I hear you loud and clear. I mean, I always used to tell people, I'm not firing you. You fired yourself. You didn't show up. You did a bad job. I caught you walking out the back door with a case of wine.
Yeah. Exactly. I've seen all those things too, for sure. But it's part of the business. Again, I think you're talking about being the boss versus being a leader, and there's a big difference there. Let's talk about some of your success. You've got so many concepts. We obviously can't talk about all of them, but why don't you cherry pick a couple of your favorites or some of your most successful concepts and tell us about them and what set you and those places apart from the competition? What made them special? Listen closely in a professional kitchen and you'll hear it, the sound of bacon doing its job. That's why operators are choosing Smithfield Select Bacon. This premium, ready-to-cook bacon will elevate your menu and your bottom line. Smithfield saves you time, labor, and back-of-house costs, all while satisfying your guests. We're talking thick, cut, crispy, and delicious bacon that looks and tastes like it was freshly cooked from raw, but you can just heat and serve. Your guests don't usually compliment the lettuce, but they always notice the bacon. Visit smithfieldselect.com for samples to order.
Well, I, started out doing a lot of quick service, and I found that, as I grew with the business, anybody in quick service wants to move up and have a full service restaurant with a bar. And I did that. And I found that after doing a number of those full service type operations, I realized how easy quick service was compared to a full service restaurant operation. So I think that's one lesson I learned. What separated me from the rest? And I think the simple answer is I believed in having fresh food. I believed in making as much of the food as possible. And, and rather than buying the same product the guy down the street has coming off the Cisco truck, and you warm it, and it's, what differences are you than them? And the answer is, when you're making product yourself, your coleslaw, biscuits, I mean, whatever it is, if you make it on premise and you make it yourself, the quality is better, the freshness is better, and the customers know that. They taste the quality. So what I would always tell people that are in the restaurant business, and their answer to me is, well, I'm going to have more labor, right? And my answer is, you're paying Cisco to bring it in and the labor for them to make it for you. So if you made it yourself, your raw costs are much less. You're going to have a little more labor, but your labor a lot of times is there anyway in the morning, getting set up, doing the prep. And for them to do some other tasks is not really going to have a dramatic effect on your labor. So if you make the product yourself, that differentiates you. Having fresh product. I don't care what it is, a fresh salad. I mean, I see people buying the salad mixes, pre-done. I mean, come on, it's already 3 days old by the time you get it. It sits in your walk-in box for 2 days, and then it's, it hits the table and it looks like it's a year old. So, it's all about service and quality when it comes to any kind of restaurant. And the quality speaks for itself if the quality is good. And if it's bad, it also speaks for itself as well.
One of the biggest challenges operators are having right now is continuing to offer and provide value per dollar spent amidst labor shortages and rising costs, the highest labor we've ever had to pay, spikes in the cost of goods, all these things. But as people are not going to be happy when the cost of their omelet is $30 or their cheeseburger is $40. It's like there's a point where you can't continue to keep raising prices. What's the balance there? As an expert in this business, what advice would you give people that are struggling with that?
Well, the whole model for I call it the pie. The pie has changed, meaning you get, this slice goes to labor, this slice goes to food costs,
Right.
This slice is profit. Well, that model's out the door. The new model has changed because the labor's so high, and all the differentials of the food costs have all changed. So the whole model's changed. But I think there's a limit to, and I think during the pandemic and after the pandemic and through today, I think a lot of operators have exceeded their pricing, which is turning off a lot of customers, or they're not happy going to a restaurant and you're paying, like you mentioned, $30 for a hamburger. And at the bottom of the menu or on the check, you see an extra 3% for operational costs, whatever,
Yep.
As
Exactly.
a former restaurant man, that bothers me to see that 3 or 4%. Build it into the price, and don't tell people, oh, well, the prices are fluctuating. Well, that's the restaurant business. Prices fluctuate every week.
Right.
It's just basically saying to a customer that extra 3 or 4% at the bottom of the check is, I want to make more money. And I want to make more money, and you're going to make my profit better by paying that 3 or 4%, where to me, it's like buying a sandwich and they're charging me an extra $1 for tomatoes. Well, come on, build it into the price, make your price competitive. We know that the food costs are higher, but they're not that much higher. The cost of chicken is from 5 years ago, isn't that much different from today. I mean, I go to a restaurant, I order half a chicken, it's $35. I know that chicken costs $4 and half of it's $2, right? So you put your sides on the plate, whatever it is, you're in the plate for $3, $4. You don't need to get $30, $35 for a half a chicken and still make profit. You can sell it for less, but I think people are using the economy and what's going on in the world as an excuse to get away with raising the prices that are just far beyond what they should be. And I think they're hurting themselves doing that.
I
I
agree
think
with
that
you. I think you're sending your guests to the competition. You're bringing up a really good point because I've seen a couple of menus lately where the operators are trying to pass on the credit card fees to the guest if they choose to use a credit card. That was always a cost of doing business. It's a convenience thing. I get that a majority of the payments are credit cards, but it's like that just puts a bad taste in the guest's mouth when now you want to whack them 2 or 3% just because you're using a credit card.
the credit card part does not bother me as much as the 3% for health
Riddance
insurance.
fee, right?
It's like, come on, man. I mean, you're in business. I mean, I could put a list of 20 items on my tickets of how I want to charge you extra, but I don't because I want to keep you coming back. So, I just believe that a smaller profit in a return customer is better than a one-time profit from a one-time customer.
No question.
So there is a limit where I think a lot of operators have exceeded that limit.
Let's shift gears because you are, of course, a marketing expert. And we're going to talk all about your agency in a moment. But I used to consider these things that set my restaurants apart from the competition hooks. These things that capture the guest's imagination where the phones come out and they spread things on social media and it really sets your place apart and it draws business. Did you have any really big hooks in your restaurant that nobody else did, but you did it, and it's like people appreciated it? Your guests would come in because of those things.
It's funny how
Yeah.
in today's world with the internet, Instagram, and all the crazy stuff you see online, TikTok, you can create a vibe a lot easier now than you could have 20 years ago. When I was slinging hash and taking out trash, it was a different world than it is today. I sold my last restaurant in 2015, and a lot's changed since then. And I think that being able to create that vibe, that hip place to go, the ambiance, the look, the feel, that has more draw than a lot of times the food. It's just the vibe is created, and sometimes it just actually, not most of the time, I think it's pure luck. And if you can get on that wave and get that vibe somehow, I think that will, certainly benefit you at the end of the day. How to create that vibe is something that we do for people, and it's all a lot of it's in the marketing. But again, a lot of it's luck. A lot of it's just being at the right time, the right place, the right location, and all the stars aligned. So a lot of it, it is something that you can't control. But if you're able to push the vibe and get it going in some format, then I think you're certainly going to benefit.
Catering is a powerful profit center for your restaurant, but are you still juggling catering orders through email, phone calls, and scattered messages? Guess what? Your customers notice. One missed detail, one wrong delivery, and suddenly a new or even repeat customers ordering from your competitor. Rally Catering puts all your orders in one place, online, organized, and accurate. Your team know what to do. Your customers can order anytime. Say goodbye to chaos and say hello efficiency. Stop losing orders. Keep customers happy. Make catering simple with Rally Catering. Get a free demo at rallycatering.com/rockstars. Think about loyalty programs because every restaurant seems to have one, and a lot of them are like old school. I don't see the punch cards anymore, but it's okay. Buy 5 sandwiches and get the 6th free, whatever it is.
Right.
That's old and tired. Is there any really dynamic loyalty program out there?
I find that loyalty programs never work the way you expect them to work.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example.
Please.
I go into a new restaurant. I was there maybe once after they opened. And the waiter comes up to me with the check and he says, you have $100 worth of points. So the check is $10. And I'm like thinking, and I said to him, this is my second time here. There's no way I could build up, So I happen to know the owner, and I sat down and talked to him, and I explained to him how his loyalty program is not working properly because the numbers aren't right. And I think that's an ongoing problem, that a lot of these systems don't work as well as they should. And then it becomes a burden to the restaurant operator to have these loyalty programs and to keep track of it and to make sure it's right and make sure it's working right and promote it. There's a lot of effort that goes into a loyalty program that I think is wasted. What's the best loyalty program out there? They all say they're the best. Everybody's got the best loyalty program. I don't know. It's just, loyalty programs are shot in the dark. Once you start working with it, you'll find out all the pros and cons. And I think that platforms like Toast have developed loyalty programs that seem to be working well. But they've gone through a lot of time and expense to develop those programs and to get them to work properly. I mean, every POS system has a loyalty program built in.
Yeah.
So which one is better? I can't give you a straight answer because I don't have the experience of working with all these different POS systems. So, but I will say, be careful when you pick a POS that has a loyalty program, and make sure it works to your satisfaction, because everybody's restaurant's different.
There's a lot of this industry that relies on discounting. What's your thoughts on that? I learned a long time ago that once you discount something, the guest never feels like they want to pay full price.
I call it discount whores, coupon whores. And I think, coupons are a vital part of the fast food and fast casual side of the business, but I don't think it's the right answer to generating traffic in the nicer, restaurant, full service restaurant bar operations, because it cheapens the overall look and feel of the restaurant. If you keep banging out coupons, $20 off, $30, you fall into that you become addicted to the coupons because they do work, but you're cutting your profit to get them in the door. I think there's better ways to market your restaurant on the full service side than coupons on the fast food side. That's the game you're in. You look at the big food chains, Burger King, Popeyes, Domino's, and even the fast casuals like Cava or many others, but they're geared for that discount, that coupon. People are looking for that. I don't see them looking. They're not that interested in coupons if you're going to a high-end sit-down restaurant, full service. So I discourage people in that side of the business for using coupons. There's better ways to do it. But on the quick service and fast casual, it is what it is.
You sold your last restaurant, you said, in 2015, and then you transitioned into full service marketing agency. Where'd the brainchild come for that? And did you always have a passion for marketing, and you had so much hospitality experience, you just knew you could help other operators? Tell us about the startup, and then tell us all about ZivZo and what you specialize in.
Well, I was always good at getting my restaurants marketing and press, and I just happened to have that knack. But when I got into the marketing and advertising business, not because I kind of fell into it. After I sold my restaurant, I had people coming to me, my friends that had restaurants, and Benny, what do you think we should do with this? Or how do you handle that? And it just kind of developed, naturally. I started out, initially strictly doing video. And then I found that, video is a one-off. They come, they do their video, you never see them again. So then I branched out and started doing social media marketing, and then it just grew. So we pretty much do every kind of marketing there is, from websites to social media marketing to video production, even animation. So it just kind of blossomed out of just helping a few of my friends, and it's grown over the years. It's grown pretty well.
Would you have a specialized approach? You're probably working with clients personally, but you have a whole team of experts as well. Let's just say an audience member is interested in working with you. What's the engagement look like? And how do you get to know their business before you can formulate a brand strategy and all those kinds of things that are so important to marketing?
The thing that we do is we spend time learning about your business. And that's the key. The more we know about your business, the more we're going to understand how to make it work better. And we also do consulting in combination with the marketing. So we'll do work. For example, we're doing social media marketing for one company, and I see something that has nothing to do with marketing. I'm going to tell you. So a lot of times you get the benefit of working with us, because we will tell you things that typical market agency has no idea about. I'm a restaurant guy. We have clients that are not restaurants. And, I have porta potty companies and I have heart lung transplant surgeons as clients and everything in between. But we do a lot of restaurants because, like I said, I was slinging hash and taking out trash for 45 years.
Love it.
I've walked a mile in every operator's shoes.
Yes.
Well, I understand their pain points better than most, executives in the marketing business. So there's a lot of things that why we're good at restaurant marketers is because we understand the business. But every restaurant's different. Everybody has the little nuances, and you need to understand that in order to handle the marketing and how to get people, to drive people to that restaurant or to have them pick up the phone and make a delivery or pick up, carry out. It's the knowledge of understanding how the business works. And if anyone hires an agency and they don't take that time to learn about the business, they're not going to be able to provide you with the services that you're really looking for. And the returns is the key to the show. I mean, it's all return on the investment. If we don't get our clients, and I don't care what business they're in, if we don't get a return on their advertising budget that they spend monthly, they're going to fire us. So we have to give you, a restaurant owner or any kind of business we handle, and make sure that you're getting your money's worth, you're getting your bang for your buck, and you're getting a return on your investment. And you can see the increases or whatever we're promoting at the time. You can see it's working. And pretty quickly if it's not working. There's no science to it. You see people and coming in and dollars going up, and sales going up, or you don't. So it's pretty simple to follow.
Trust factor there, because we're talking about decades of hard-won experience. I like the fact that you walked 1,000,000 miles in those shoes. I mean, that absolutely is true.
Hey, look at me. I'm only 30 years old.
That's awesome. So that's ZivZo.com. And Benny, it's been my pleasure having you on the show. You've offered some great value to our audience, and we covered some ground talking all about what makes a great restaurant tick and what worked for you. Thank you for being here.
I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon.
Was the Restaurant Rockstars Podcast. Thank you so much to our audience for tuning in. Thank you to our sponsors this week. Can't wait to see you in the next episode. Stay well, stay tuned, and I will see you then. And that is a wrap.